Welcome to Church at Home with Fleetwood International. As the family of God, we are drawn to this place, to this time of worship again and again, because we were formerly a bunch of dead people, separated from God, but now have been made alive in Christ. God has come near to us. He has called us by name, and we respond to him by running to him. And we enter this place of worship into God's presence with humility, abandoned. We celebrate who God is and what he has done for us. The worship leader of Psalm 95 invites us, come let us bow down in worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care. Today, if only you would hear his voice, do not harden your heart. If this is your very first time joining us online, I want to say a huge welcome to you. We're really glad that you are here. Be in a posture to enter into worship, to see Jesus, to hear his word, expectant of what God is going to do today. I have a couple of things to make you aware of. Our church prayer meeting gathers on Wednesday evenings. We alternate between online and Zoom meetings. This Wednesday we'll be meeting here in the sanctuary at 7 p.m. to pray. To attend our 9 and 11 a.m. worship gatherings on site, you'll need to register. So just go online under Gatherings and you'll find the place to register there. And parents, you'll also need to register your kids so that they can join Kids Zone, which will happen at the same time on site at our 9 and 11 a.m. worship gatherings. Today, Pastor Evan continues in our house church sermon series. As a leadership team, we are responding to God's leading to support a network of small house churches of worship, fellowship, and resilient discipleship. So this is an important message for all of us to take in. In this time together, let's open our hearts to receive blessings from our Heavenly Father, his strength for the journey, his grace and his mercy extended to us. Now let's watch highlights from the summer ministry of Pursuit Youth. Enjoy.
Morning, church. So good to be with you. Would you join with us in worship? Yes, God, we worship you today. So you set me apart. You set me apart, gave me a new heart, filled with compassion to share your great love. Show me your ways, I want to know you. Guide me in truth, my hope is in you. That I may dwell in your house forever, lifting up your name. Dwell in your house forevermore. Sing, I hold on to you. I hold on to you, my strength and my refuge. Whom shall I fear? I know you are near. And all of my days I live for you, Lord. Establish my path. That's one thing I ask. That I may dwell in your house forever, lifting up your name. Dwell in your house forevermore. That I may dwell. That I may dwell in your house forever, lifting up your name. Dwell in your house forevermore. Holy Spirit, have your way. Sweet anointing, teach our hearts, our lives, we pray. That I may dwell in your house forever, lifting up your name. Dwell in your house forevermore. That I may dwell in your house forever, lifting up your name. Dwell in your house forevermore. Oh, that I may dwell. That I may dwell in your house forever, lifting up your name. Dwell in your house forevermore. Yes, God, we worship you. We praise your holy name because you are worthy of it. Thank you, Jesus. I cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree.
His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone. Messiah still and all alone.
Come on, church, let's sing together. Oh, praise the name.
And oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore, forever. and rose again. Oh, trample death, where is your sting? The angels roar for Christ the King. Oh, we praise Your name. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise, oh Lord our God. He shall return. He shall return in robes of white. The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints, my gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Yes, God, we worship You in our homes, at church. God, You are worthy of our praise wherever we are. Come on, church, let's just declare that. Oh, praise the name. Lift your voices. Oh, and oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise, oh Lord our God. Oh, praise the name. And oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise, oh Lord our God. Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord our God. Oh Lord our God.
Let's read from 1 Corinthians 12, verse 27 to 13, verse 13. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it. And God has placed in the church, first of all apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then miracles, then gifts of healing, of helping, of guidance, and of different kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all have gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? Now eagerly desire these greater gifts. And yet I will show you the most excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
Hey, good morning. So glad that you're with us here today. This is part 2 of our 3-part House Church series. And so we are 3 weeks away from our October 18th launch of House Churches. And it's an interesting time because we find ourselves interwoven into 3 stories that are happening right now. First, we have His story, God's story that's been going since the time of Genesis and continues on today with us. And yet we're also looking back on what we'll call their story. We're looking back on the story of the early church together today because we're wanting to take from them examples in attitude and action and belief and faith for moving forward with our story. We're trying to discern right now as a church what's the shape that we want to have in our house churches as we move forward. And that's something that you and I do together. And so I want that to be a part of our morning today. I want us to invite the Holy Spirit to come and shape your thinking and my thinking today. And so let's do that right now. Let's just pause and let's invite Him to come and to shape our time that we have here together. So let's do that now. Father, we come this morning confident and excited that you are leading us in this time. We don't know every step of the way right now, but we know enough to take the next step forward in our lives. And so we say thank you for that. We thank you for the reality that you are powerful, you are awesome. You foreknew the time that we would be living in here today, and you have not abandoned us, but you are our Father who is embracing us right now, and you are walking with us on the road that we're walking on, and you are continuing to lead us by your Spirit and by the words of your Son, Jesus Christ. And so we ask that by the presence of your Spirit, you would shape our thinking as we contemplate moving forward with house churches, as many of us think through what would that look like in our home, what are the specifics of it, and how do we invite others to come in amidst the realities and the restrictions of COVID. How do we gather amidst this? So we ask for wisdom today, we ask for promptings by your Spirit, and we ask for your courage to move forward. Amen. Amen. Friends, I'm wondering if you have ever heard of, been involved with, or seen an Ironman triathlon. This is the biggest endurance race that humans can do. An Ironman triathlon begins with a 2.4, not kilometer, but a 2.4 mile swim, usually out in the open water. And after you're done fighting the waves, you come back to land and you jump on a bicycle. And you have 112 miles to do on that bike on that same day as your swim. It's grueling. It's grueling. And then after you're done, that ride, a ride that many of us wouldn't attempt to do in one day with only having a ride, you go on to a 26.2 mile run. This is a huge, massive race. This is a race of endurance. And so I wonder, what if I asked you, raise your hand, what if I asked you if you'd be willing to come out and be in the bleachers with me and watch one of these Ironman races? How many of you would be willing to come out and do that? Just go ahead and raise your hand where you are. Would you be willing to come out and cheer on these athletes as they go through these races? That would be a fun thing to do, to go out and do that. It would be a very different thing for me to come and ask you, would you come and would you participate in this Ironman with me? Would you get onto the race course with me? Put up your hand if you'd be willing to take on that race. A lot fewer of us. And so I feel like as we move into doing house church together, we as a pastoral staff and we as a church leadership team, as a lead team, we are asking that you move from being spectators to being participants in racing. That's what we're asking you to do with house church. And we're fortunate because we have an expert in the New Testament on racing, Paul, the apostle, talks a lot about racing throughout his letters. And so I want to dive into some scripture this morning. And I hope you'll bring out your Bible as well. And again, same as last week, grab a pen or pencil, grab a physical Bible, and be writing notes, because I'm confident God's going to speak something to you today, and you're going to want to write that down when he does. So we're going to start together in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 20, verses 22 to 24. Let me read for us. I'm reading from the NIV this morning. And this is Paul speaking. And now, compelled by the Spirit, I am going to Jerusalem. This is when he's saying goodbye. I believe it's to the Ephesians. And now, compelled by the Spirit, I am going to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there. I only know that in every city the Holy Spirit warns me that prison and hardships are facing me. However, I consider my life worth nothing to me. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the good news of God's grace. Paul visualized his race. He visualized his task. And I had a fun experience when I got together with a group of friends, and we actually did one of these triathlons, but we did it as a team. It was called a team triathlon. And so we split up. We decided, okay, who's our best runner, who's good on a bike, and who's best in the water. And so I am not a fast runner, and I'm pretty slow in the water as well, but I do okay on a bike. And so my task was to get on the bike and ride that day. And so I didn't visualize doing a run coming up to the race. I didn't visualize being in the water. I was 100% focused on my task. And so we want to visualize this race that we're in, this race that we're a part of, this race that we're being called to. But let's continue and let's get more of the shape of it. Again, Paul talks about racing. 1 Corinthians 9, 24 to 25. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last. But we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Here's a core principle coming out of Paul's reflection here. Racing, being in this race, involves training. We don't want to just wing it. We want to train in anticipation of the next leg of the journey that we're in. And so training means you give up comfort. When you're in a triathlon race, it takes dedication. It takes giving your time and energy to training. And it involves getting into a routine of training as well. Then you're ready to do this race well. And so I'm wondering, House Church hosts, those of you that we've reached out to, will you come out to the training that's being offered today, even this Sunday that the sermon is on? At 1 o'clock, we will have this training here in the church building. And so I hope you'll come out. I hope you'll take advantage of being offered training directly related to this next leg of our journey together. All right, he keeps talking about races. Let's go to 2 Timothy 4, 7 to 8. Let's go there together. Now this is Paul looking back. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And this is the part to get excited about. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. He's talking about you and I. There is a finish line to our race. And there's a finish line that we should, just like Paul, look forward to. But here's a very strong reality. You cannot reach a finish line of a race if you never get off the bleachers. You've got to be a participant if you want to run this race that Paul is talking about. And maybe you haven't been out of the bleachers or out of the stands in a little while, and you feel maybe not so confident moving forward. You're wondering, do you have what it takes to jump in and engage with this same race that Paul's talking about? Well, here's where we should go then together. Let's go to the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. We've heard this before. We've heard this is a familiar scripture to us. But let's hear it with fresh ears today. Because to me, this is like the pump-up music that you want to listen to before you go into a race. And so let me read for you, and I hope you'll get pumped up by it. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Perseverance means it's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of energy and effort. Let us run the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and protector of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. That's what the finish line looks like. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. That's where we go to get some energy, get some vigor as we head out onto the racetrack. And so we're in a race. You and I, each of us, we have a race to run. We want to get involved in it. We want to do well in it. And so we need to visualize ourselves as runners. Don't visualize yourself as someone sitting on the sidelines with church anymore. Begin to visualize yourself as a main participant, as someone who engages, as someone who leads, as someone who's giving effort and thought and time and energy into making church happen. That's what it looks like to participate on the race course in this season that we're in as a church. So this is a tough race, and there are many racers who are out there. You're not racing alone. And this is a race that requires training and endurance. And yet, there's some encouragement for you amidst that. And in the Christian community, we're all on a race. But while you're out there on the race course, every other racer that you see is someone that wants to see you finish well. Someone who's cheering you on. Someone who's there to help you when you don't feel like you've got enough energy to move forward, put their arm around you and support you. We're in a race, but we're not in a race alone. We're in this race together, and it's so worth it. And so the scripture talks about having a race that's marked out for us. It's like we have a course that we know we have to run, and in these triathlons, you can't just go anywhere you want and make up the mileage totals that you need. You have to stick to the race course that's marked out for you. And so there's this segment that we're in now that has some very strong parallels to a segment that the early church was in. And so we're going to go there, we're going to look at it, we're going to contrast it. So let's go back to the book of Acts, and let's go to chapter 7, and we'll be in verses 754, and we'll read until 8:8. And many of you might already know the scripture, but it reflects the parallel to us today that we're scattered. We're a scattered church. This is a church that was scattered. We were scattered for different reasons. They were scattered for persecution. We are scattered because of the impact of a pandemic right now. And yet, by reading about their experience and how God moved and what God did and what our brothers and sisters at that time did, it gives us some direction about how we can respond in our own time. So let's read together. We begin by reading about the stoning of Stephen. He's just finished giving his testimony, and so we're told what happens leading up to the scattering of the early church. When the members of the Sanhedrin heard this, they were furious. This was Stephen's testimony. They were furious and they gnashed their teeth at him. But Stephen, full of the Holy Spirit, looked up to heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing at the right hand of God. Look, he said, I see heaven open, the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. At this, they covered their ears, and yelling at the top of their voices, they all rushed at him, dragged him out of the city, and began to stone him. Meanwhile, the witnesses laid their coats at the feet of a young man named Saul. While they were stoning him, Stephen prayed, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. Then he fell to his knees and he cried out, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. When he had said this, he fell asleep. And Saul approved of their killing him. Now let's pay attention to what happens next. On that day, a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem, and all, except the apostles, were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Godly men buried Stephen and mourned deeply for him. But Saul began to destroy the church. Going from house to house, he dragged off both men and women and put them in prison. Those who had been scattered preached the word wherever they went. This is how the church responded to being scattered. Philip went down to a city in Samaria and proclaimed the Messiah there. When the crowds heard Philip and saw the signs he performed, they all paid close attention to what he said. For with shrieks, impure spirits came out of many, and many who were paralyzed or lame were healed. So there was great joy in that city. Wow. Here's what's happening. Amidst this scattering of the early church, they could not help but share the good news where they went. The very cause of their persecution, they didn't stop it. They couldn't help themselves. People needed to know. They needed to hear. And we see the ministry continued. The church continued to minister where they went. There were these power encounters that happened, and the power of the kingdom of God continued to advance and take territory away from our enemy. God takes a very difficult time, what through human eyes we would see as a terrible time of persecution. And he takes that difficult season of the early church, a difficult segment in their race. We're in a difficult segment in our race right now as a church, as a people. And God took it and he used it to advance his purposes, and we're asking him to do that in our midst again today. Because what this is, when God takes something bad and he turns it into something good, that's something that only I think he can do in his providence, is the word, God's providence. When that happens, we continue to be the church by his design amidst the difficult segment that we're in. And so, in God's providence, we are scattered, but we want to still be engaged with the mission that he's given us. We are scattered, but we want to be working hard. We want to be running this race with endurance. We want to be figuring out how do we reshape our ministry and who we are as a church and continue to engage. We want to put in that hard effort that's going to take endurance. There's lots of hard work ahead of us, but we can do it. And we are scattered, but again, we're not alone. Everyone else running that race with us is on our team. And so we want to move forward in God's providence. It's not all doom and gloom, because we have a God who can take a very difficult situation and can make very good things come out of it. Be encouraged. And so we have this idea of how the early church ran this difficult section in their race. So let's turn our attention now and let's talk more about the section that we're in together here today. Where are we at in our race? What's the course that's marked out for us? Well, let's go back to our 5 principles, or our 5 things that make up Sunday morning. What is house church on Sunday morning? We got the framework or the skeleton of it last week, and let's just do a review of that. So these 5 things of what we're wanting to do when we get together in our houses on Sunday morning is: 1, we want to gather, 3 to 4 units. 2, we want to be singing. We want to be having that time of worship together. 3, we want to update and pray for one another. 4, we have the Sunday sermon, the teaching of the apostles that we want to take in because we want to be renewing our minds. And 5, we want to share a meal together. We want to have that breaking of bread experience. And so, we know the basic framework. But something that I want to communicate today is how we live out that basic framework has a lot of flexibility to it. And to illustrate this, I've got to go to something that I had to borrow some Play-Doh from my kids. So let's get into this Play-Doh and let's have a look at how our church can be molded and shaped amidst this time. One of the great things about being a dad is I get to go back into all the stuff I played with as a kid. I borrowed this from Leah and Gavin today. Play-Doh. We've all held it. We all know it. Some of you couldn't make it through to snack time, so you ate it. But let's use it as an illustration for why we might be going to the house church model and why it's so good for us in this season. Well, here we are, FIC. We're a full church, and yet now we can no longer gather here together. And so with house churches, we have the flexibility that we can move to continuing to have fellowship together, but we can meet in multiple locations. And as the restrictions of COVID-19, they're likely going to become more strict, and then they're going to release, and there might be some flex back and forth as we go through waves. Well, with the house church model, we can continue to go to smaller and smaller groupings, and yet still not be alone and not be isolated. And as those restrictions come back off, well, we can quickly move back together. And so this flexibility allows us to continue on. And we look forward to the day when we're just all going to come back and be one again here in this space. But it's going to be a little while. And so the other piece to it that I want to think through Play-Doh with is that these 5 things that we're asking you to do on Sunday morning, I want you to know that it's moldable. You can shape Sunday mornings to what's best for your house church. And so when you think about and you consider and you anticipate meeting together on Sunday morning on the 18th, I want you to know that there is some plasticity to it. There's some flexibility. You can begin to shape it to what you think is best for your situation. Let me explain a bit more. So let's look at the 5 things that we're doing together on Sunday morning, and let's talk about how we can flex in them a little bit and how we might shape them. So 1, the idea of gathering in 3 to 4 units. Remember, that's a family, a couple, or an individual, a single person. We can have house church together, and I think we can do it confidently if we're willing to make our house church group, if we're willing to make that group our social group. The province of BC on the CDC website identifies and explains what a social group is, a group where we could maybe be a little bit more relaxed when we're together as long as we consistently stick together. And so we're going to include a link for you on this sermon page that you can check out what the province latest is. It was updated at the beginning of September on what a social group is, and you can consider moving forward with your house church as your social group. And so this gathering, you're welcome to move houses as well. If someone's not available or their house isn't available on one Sunday, you're allowed to move it to a different location in the group, or you can decide to take turns hosting. That's plenty okay. Other things we've thought of is if you have a member that's showing cold or flu symptoms one week, you can take a Sunday or two and you can not meet in person, or that person could just Zoom in. You can Skype in. You can get creative with how you gather on Sunday mornings. But just keep gathering because we don't want to be out of fellowship, even amidst those times. Second, we're saying sing. We're saying come together and have worship together. And here in this church building, when we're singing, we have our mask on. So again, you make a decision, mask on, mask off when you're worshiping together. And our worship teams are going to continue to lead us in worship on Sunday mornings. But I want you to know that you're welcome to expand that worship time. One of the things that we like to do is we, as a family, like to print out our favorite hymns or our favorite worship songs, and we create a booklet, just a printed booklet where we have several copies of the same booklet. And then we jump to those and we include those to expand our worship time. So you are more than welcome to get creative. If you play the guitar, if you've got an instrument, you're welcome to shape the Sunday morning time within your house church. Third, we want to be updating and praying for one another. And we can do that. We want to do that as much as possible in person. But when that's not available to us, we can still be a house church together over text, over email, over the technology that we have. I don't want to give you the idea from last week that we're anti-technology or anti-using options. They're there, but the ideal is to still be updating and gathering and praying for one another in the same room. And again, we have number 4, Sunday sermon, the renewing of our minds. Well, the reality is within FIC, we've got a lot of shift workers, people who can't be present on Sunday morning. And so if you have shift workers in your house church, what you might want to consider is the sermon video is usually up by Saturday evening. So you could flex. You can move your gathering time from Sunday morning from 9 and 11. You could move it to Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Find something that can work for those shift workers that are within your group. And finally, this idea of sharing a meal together. I guess I was really appreciative of some of the responses that we had at our first training session because, yeah, sharing the meal can be a kind of counterintuitive idea right now, given that we're supposed to not be doing potlucks together. And so you need to make choices based on your own judgment and comfort moving forward as a house church group. And so sharing a meal, you might have a group together where you've been in each other's social circle for a long time already, and so you might be comfortable sharing a meal together. That might be a thing that your whole group is okay with. You might also have the idea of, instead of having the potluck, you have a single server or you prep plates ahead of time. You're welcome to shape the meal time in that way as well. And some, you're welcome to remove the whole full meal idea completely out, and your breaking of bread time could be coffee together after the service. You just want to make sure that you include that basic framework in what you're doing. But I hope what you're seeing here is that while we're wanting to avoid confusion by putting out too many options, articulating all the available options, we're wanting to bring clarity to this by sticking to the core that we think is best moving forward. I also want to communicate to you this morning that there is flexibility and freedom to shape and mold your house church. Use wisdom, use your own judgment, and take into consideration the comfort of all members of your group as you make decisions moving forward. And so, what is house church designed to do? Let's look at that question together as we move forward. What is house church designed to do? Well, last week we talked about house church is designed to keep us in fellowship with one another because we don't want to be found out of fellowship. That's a scary place to be. That's a harmful place to be. So number one, we want to be continuing to be in fellowship together through house church. But I think another purpose behind the design of house church is that we want to continue to live out our membership covenant in this season. And what's the membership covenant? Well, if you remember, it might be a little bit fuzzy for you because you haven't looked at it in a little while. Maybe you haven't had it in front of you since the AGM, and that's okay. But our membership covenant is our way of doing life together. It's our way of moving forward. It's the way of our King, is one way to think of it. Our membership covenant is the way of our King, a summary of the way of His way of living together. It's the way that we understand we can see His kingdom advanced. And it's a way that follows an ancient tradition. The early church was known as the way. And so I think it would be good for us this morning to get a refresher, take a refresher of our covenant membership agreement and have a look at it together this morning. So let's do that. And so I've got a copy of it here, and I'll have one come up on the screen here for you. Having received Christ as my Lord and Savior and being baptized by immersion and being in agreement with Fleetwood International Church's statements, strategy, and structure, I now feel led by the Holy Spirit to unite with the Fleetwood International Church family. In doing so, I commit myself to God and to the other members to do the following. So this is a statement of commitment that we've all given. 1, I will protect the unity of my church by acting in love towards the other members, by refusing to gossip, by following the leaders. And so could I candidly just say to you that I believe that God has been leading our leaders in this season. He's leading leaders of all churches right now and how they're to navigate this season, how they're to move forward together. And so when we're asking you to follow the leaderships, it's because we are confident that God has spoken, God has shaped, because we have set apart that time. We have gone to Him as leaders, and we have asked Him to shape and lead us in leading this church. And so we commit to protect the unity of our church. 2, I will share the responsibility of my church by praying for its growth, by inviting others to attend, by warmly welcoming those who visit. This is opening up our homes in this season. This is how we live this out, this commitment. Because God right now, He is stretching our hearts. This is like an intense workout for us. He's taking us to a whole new level in our training by asking us to do something that might even be a bit uncomfortable, the idea of opening up our homes and inviting others in. But this is good. He's coaching us. He's leading us. He's enabling us and training us to do better in this race, especially in this season right now. 3, I will serve the ministry of my church by discovering my gifts and talents, by taking up opportunities to be equipped to serve, and by developing a servant's heart. I want you to know that how I see it is that house church is ministry. If you participate in house church, you are ministering to the wider body. And so we want to have servant hearts right now. And yes, He's enlarging those. And we have to remember that we are in God's providence right now. He's using a tough situation that we're in, and He's going to bring about good things if we're willing to walk in obedience to how He wants us to live and be as a church. And finally, I will support the testimony of my church. Number 4, by attending faithfully, by living a godly life, by giving regularly. And I think each of those speak for themselves. And so we have this covenant relationship together. It means that we're not alone. By agreement that we've signed on, we've said this is a good idea, we're not meant to go forward alone. We're not meant to go forward out of fellowship. We're meant to know our way of living. We're meant to encourage one another in our way of living. And so let's continue this way that we've agreed to in the house church format. Now, as we wind up our time together this morning, I promised last week that I would just go through some of the brass tacks of house church, and I've identified a couple of questions that I want to respond on with this sermon time this morning. So I want to respond to our first question of how are kids going to participate in house church? And that's an important question. It's important that we have that idea moving forward that we want kids to be participating in house church. And so I want you to know that Jen and I, we had house church in our home. We hosted and we participated in house church in our home for 5 years. And so we've got some thoughts for you that can help you to engage with kids in house church as you gather. So let's take a moment together and let's talk about house church with kids. And so the first principle that we want to share is that we want to have a value for kids in our churches at home. And we want to have a value that we also make moms with kids who are nursing, we want to make them comfortable as well within our groups. And so one of the ways that we want kids to know that they're valued is that we want them to be participating in our Sunday time. So we can do that by engaging them with some responsibilities. You could ask kids of any age to pray, to take part in praying, or school-age kids, you can have them reading some scripture as part of the day, or you can give them a responsibility that they hand out some music booklets if you choose to do that. So giving them responsibilities, letting them know that they are very much part of the group, part of the church together is really important. And I think third, parents, have realistic and age-appropriate expectations for your kids. And that's why we've got the toys out here. Our kids at house church, when they're a young age, we don't expect them to be able to sit quietly and sit through an hour to an hour and a half of time without having something to do. And so parents, if you can plan ahead and either bring with you or have ready just quiet activities, whether that's drawing, doing some light bright, just just some quiet activities that they can engage in. And what you'll see is that your kids, whether it's watching the sermon or just the singing time together, they are taking things in, they're absorbing things. And what will happen is you'll end up talking about something from Sunday service with them later. When you thought that they were just playing or coloring, they were taking in something important. God was using that time to speak to their little heart. And so I think a final thing that I would say, besides having realistic expectations, is we want to make sure that we engage youth, and we want to make sure that we're engaging teenagers that are within the house church. And my view on it is just start engaging them. Let them be at the adult table. Let them be at the adult table for the whole part of the service. So you engage with them, you ask them questions, you ask them for their thoughts when you have your discussions, and you just begin to shape and have a relationship with one another that's just on some equal footing. And so that's how we would encourage you to move forward with having kids present. Be patient, value them, and it's okay if there's some disturbances as you go. That's perfectly okay in the house church setting. So we want to value kids when we gather together in the house churches. A second question that came forward this week is, who will I be doing house church with? How is that decided? Well, over the next week or so, you should receive an invitation from a house church host that you are being invited to their home starting October 18th. Now, the office has worked really hard at these groupings, and the groupings are based on previous relationship already established with each other. It's also based on location, where different people live, and are they close to each other. It's also based on group size. We want to make sure that we're staying within the guidelines that our province is asking us to. And so these house church groupings, what I want you to do is that if you're not invited out within the next week or so, if you feel like you've been overlooked, I want you to contact the office and just let the office know that I haven't been assigned a house church yet. I haven't been brought into that yet. The other thing I would say is that if it's your desire to host a house church and you haven't been, if you haven't been contacted to be a host yet, but you'd like to be, just come on out to today's training. So 1 p.m. here at the church. Come on out and we can talk with you then. So as we conclude here together today, I'm asking that you do 3 things going forward in the week. Number 1, that you would engage the sermon discussion questions at the end of this video. This will be a core part to our house church format going forward, and so why not have a look at them and discuss them with your family or friends over lunch today? The second thing I would ask you to do is please read that BC Center for Disease Control social groupings page that we have listed, because it's going to give you an idea of the guidelines the province is expecting us to be following as we move forward with house churches. And finally, I just ask that you would begin to consider how you would like to think like Play-Doh and begin to shape and to mold your house church, those core elements, that core structure to house church. How are you going to shape it on October 18th? And finally, as we close together, I just want to keep this definition of house church in front of us. So let's look at it one more time this week together. A house church is a gathering of devoted worshipers of Jesus Christ who share their lives with one another and treat one another as family. Each unit comes to serve one another and to train together in shaping their lives to the way of Jesus by being known to each other and walking with one another. Let's be excited about running this race, and let's be excited about running together in more significant ways as we move forward. God bless you this week.
Let's sing together. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in His wide Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. And the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. In the light of his glory and grace.
The presence of God is so powerful, and we respond with praise and by taking next steps of faith. So rethink what gathering as the church will look like for you as we organize and launch house church gatherings Sunday, October the 18th. Ask how God would have you get involved, how you will connect during this season. And as encouragement, FIC has been offered matching funds for donations towards our new building project, up to $10,000 received by the first week of October. Your Thanksgiving offering can be marked New Building Fund, and there are options to give online. We'll celebrate God's provision on Thanksgiving Sunday together. Let's pray together. Spirit of God, thank you for your presence in us and among us as your people, the church gathered and scattered. Lord Jesus, we believe that you are the treasure, you are the prize. God, would you be so gracious to us to take today's message and lead us further as a church to walk with Jesus. We love you, Lord, and we recognize just how dependent we are upon you as a church. So give us your vision and your purpose. Give us courage and compassion as we carry out the mission that you have called us to in this season. And this week, I pray for healing for those who are sick, that they would be restored to health. I pray also for families, for protection as kids go back to school. Provide also for families who are in need. And may your good spirit just fill our hearts and each one of our homes with exuberant joy and peace today. I pray this in the name of Jesus, in the power of your Holy Spirit. Amen. This morning we are introducing 3 discussion questions on the topic of the sermon, house churches. I encourage you to use these questions for discussion now or to shape your conversation over lunch. Thanks.